Hey Psych Chat fans, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, hey, my name is Nikki, and I'm a mental health and addiction psychotherapist. Today's chit chat video, we're going to be talking about depression, but more specifically, we're going to be talking about SAD, which is an acronym for Seasonal Affective Disorder. Now, before we jump into today's video, I did want to point out the elephant in the room, which is my makeup look. I tend to have more of a natural makeup look when I'm filming, but today I was just really motivated, really ambitious to recreate a look from Kathleen Tutorial's channel that I really just appreciated and just felt that this was something that spoke to me in the moment. So I just sat in front of my vanity for about 3 hours, not gonna lie, and created this look. So this was something that just balanced me, something that just spoke to me, and I just felt like I was in my element. So if you guys engage in self-care activities that involve makeup, please leave a comment down below, and if not, let me know what your self-care activities are. So before we get started, I did want to highlight that some information can be triggering. If this is the case for you, please use your strategies, use your tools, use your support network in order to help reestablish your sense of balance. Also, this information, this channel altogether is really about sharing tips and tricks and strategies, education, and spread awareness about mental health, addiction, and trauma. So this information is really information that just helps us to understand what depression is, what it looks like, and maybe what the difference between feeling sad and feeling depressed. So let's jump into today's video. Okay guys, so we're talking about seasonal affective disorder, otherwise known as SAD. So seasonal affective disorder is actually not an independent diagnosis. So just some information about me and what I do. I'm not in a position of diagnosing, not yet. I'm in the process of obtaining my doctorate in clinical psychology. So once I complete my doctorate and obtain my license as a psychologist, then I'll have diagnosing ability in Ontario, Canada. But until then, I'm just kind of talking about the diagnostic criteria according to the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5th edition. And this is what the requirements are to diagnose depression. So seasonal affective disorder is not mutually exclusive. It's not an independent disorder. It's actually kind of mushed into the category of major depressive disorder. Now, there's a difference between having the seasonal or winter blues, which sometimes I think majority of people tend to fall into that if you have winter or if you are affected by winter in your community. Whether it's just not feeling motivated, it's really tough to get out of bed, just feeling sluggish, right? That can really be kind of the winter blues. But what is the difference between winter blues and depression? Well, according to the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, DSM-5, which I have right here, this holds the criteria that I will articulate based on what they've said here on what the criteria is for diagnosing major depressive disorder. So, an individual who struggles with seasonal depression, rather, is now under this category of major depression. So those of you who struggle with more than just the winter blues and you feel that your symptoms might be lined up with seasonal affective traits, then keep on listening. So according to the DSM-5, criterion A outlines that 5 or more of the following requirements, or symptoms rather, are present during a 2-week period and represent a change from the norm, whether we're experiencing depressed mood or whether we've had a loss of interest in one's pleasurable activities. So either or. So criterion A has a list of about 9 different symptoms, and this is depressed mood most of the day. Number 2, marked by diminished interest or pleasure in all or most activities. So if you really enjoy applying your makeup, but you haven't picked up a brush in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and this is something that you really love to do, there might be an element of depression. Number 3, significant weight loss or significant weight gain. So individuals might not necessarily have an appetite, and when we're feeling depressed, we might not necessarily remember to eat, or might be the opposite. We might actually be eating more, maybe emotionally eating. So this is something to keep in mind as well. Insomnia. So if we have sleep disturbances, inability to fall asleep, difficulty staying asleep, or feeling sluggish or difficulty waking up in the morning, might be aspects or might be symptoms associated with depression. Or vice versa. So in fact, we might be sleeping a lot more. And this reminds me actually of the movie Sex and the City, where Carrie Bradshaw is supposed to marry Big. Something ends up happening. If you haven't seen the movie, I suggest you go see the movie. It came out a while ago, but anyway, she falls into what looks like depression, where she's on vacation with her best friends, but she's sleeping all day. So this might be a symptom of depression. There's also psychomotor agitation. So for instance, individuals who feel depressed might, for instance, walk slower than normal, or their shoulders might be slouched over, right? So their body behavior, their posture tends to change. So even being mindful of how we're presenting and what our body language is saying, can also be an indication of maybe we might be struggling with a symptom of depression or depression. So fatigue, loss of energy is another criteria or part of a requirement regarding depression. We also have feelings of worthlessness or hopelessness. And this is very common when I work with clients. A lot of the times they feel hopeless. Oh, this isn't going to change. I can't get out of my hole. I can't get out of my rut. I don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. So this might be something, again, in isolation, this symptom might not necessarily point to any forms of depression, but in conjunction with some other symptoms, there might be an element of depression. So diminished ability to concentrate. So if our cognitive abilities, memory, concentration, anything aspect, higher order reasoning is compromised, then again, that might tell us there might be an element of depression and something to look out for. So it's not uncommon for someone to have diminished cognitive capacities, especially when we're experiencing any form of stressor, we're triggered, right? Or even just if we've experienced more so of a chronic form of depression, it's not uncommon to have aspects of like memory loss, right? Where did I leave my keys? I found my remote control in the fridge. How did that get there, right? Things like that. And lastly, which is one of the most important, is suicidality. So there are individuals who struggle with depression who might not necessarily have suicidal thoughts or passing suicidal thoughts, but it's not uncommon to have these suicidal thoughts, in aspects of active depression. And suicidality is something that people tend not to feel comfortable about. It can be pretty scary. But talking about suicide, if you have thoughts of suicide, calling a suicide helpline is going to be very important, which I will link a helpline down below in the description box. So if you feel like you need to reach out in the moment and you need immediate support, please do use that link and use these resources, because they're there to support you. They're there to be part of your team, part of your support network, so please do use them. In these instances, you can create a suicide prevention plan. You can talk about if you have a plan, if you have a timeline. So then this way, the counselor on the other line who's talking to you, or hopefully a family member, or your priest, or your neighbor, whoever, it can help you with preventing any sort of aspects of further suicide thought, or really help either get you to a safe space, whether it is a hospital, or whether it's seeing your therapist, seeing your psychologist, seeing your psychiatrist. Okay, so those are all the requirements under Criterion A. So remember, Criterion A has to do with depressed mood, or a loss of interest in one's pleasurable, cherished activities. Now, Criterion B is the symptoms cause clinically or significant distress or impairment. So individuals might experience, let's say, certain symptoms of depression, but might not necessarily fit the criteria requirements of major depressive disorder. So they might not necessarily impact their daily living or daily functioning. It might be really difficult for them to get out of bed. It might be difficult, to feel motivated. They might even have some cognitive impairment, like remembering a particular scheduled meeting, things like that. But it doesn't significantly impact their daily living. However, again, depression is on a spectrum. So there's individuals who experience mild forms of depression all the way up to severe and debilitating forms of depression. So it's also determining, are these symptoms impacting our daily living? And if so, what does that look like for us? Lastly, Criterion C, which is the episodes do not contribute to any form of medical condition or substance use. Sometimes individuals might use particular substances such as alcohol. So alcohol affects the brain in a particular way that some people might have, or who have rather, a predisposition to depression might have, some form of blues when they're drinking. So it's not uncommon to have, that happy drunk. It's not uncommon to have that sad drunk, that kind of sort of situation. So if you experience something like that, that does not fit the criteria for major depressive disorder because it's substance induced. So if the individual is not drinking, let's say 3 months or 6 months, and we have a better idea of what their baseline is, then we can look at their symptoms, and if it's in line with major depressive disorder or MDD, then there can be a sufficient diagnosis of depression. However, if that's an isolated event, chances are that doesn't warrant a diagnosis of depression or seasonal affective disorder. So essentially why I was talking about MDD and the requirements was because seasonal affective disorder fits into those criteria. So if you're experiencing those types of symptoms and it's occurring within, let's say, the winter time, and this is happening not 1 year, this has happened numerous years and reoccurrent at least for 2 years. So if this fits what you're experiencing, then there might be an element of seasonal affective disorder within MDD. So this is something to keep in mind, and maybe even something to voice to your family doctor, so in this way a referral can be made maybe to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or maybe even Googling a psychotherapist such as myself in order to help really sort out what's going on, to see what aspects or what experiences, triggers might be contributing to our aspects of depression. Are there any external elements that might be impacting us in the moment, such as a job loss, right, an isolated event, or is it kind of something that we're experiencing, a stressor that is maybe more chronic, more ongoing, such as breaking up with someone in a relationship, but trying to still remain friends, or maybe it was not such a great breakup, and maybe this individual is trying to connect with you, gain some sort of relationship, or try to mend that relationship, when that is obviously very overwhelming for us. So the re-entrance of this person can be re-triggering again and again and again. This process and this notion of depression, even though if we have a genetic predisposition, even though if there's other elements that are contributing to our aspects of depression, please know that, with psychotropic medication and or combination of interventions such as cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, can be very beneficial, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's really about using your strategies, opening up about your experiences, and bringing some unconscious stuff that is really impacting us to the conscious level, so this way we can process it and then we can move forward on our journey. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today, especially since I live in Ontario. It can be pretty cold here during the winter season, and it's not uncommon for individuals that I work with to struggle with aspects of depression during those winter months. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Click that little bell down below so this way you are notified when I upload new videos. I upload new videos every Saturday and Sunday, and hopefully in the near future I will upload a third video. Again, we're going to see. We're going to see how that works out, but I'm hoping that I can establish a routine where I do film and release 3 videos a week for you guys. So thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate your support, guys. Have yourself a wonderful self-care day. Bye for now, guys.